What do we know about this release from Anthropic?
Opus 4.7 is an updated version from an existing model, so it's not a new model. And basically, this is also a news flow story because there were media reports earlier in the week about what it could do, and those media reports have actually been proved right. So there's no big market reaction in the moment to this. But it's basically better at two things. Coding, it takes an instruction more literally, so you can basically take a tough programming workload, say to it, do this, go away, go to bed, wake up, and it should be done. You know, and that in industry for software engineers is where the value of these models is. But how it's impacted markets, you know, earlier in the week, if you look at names like Figma or Adobe, is it's basically good at making stuff that's visual. It can take into account higher resolution images, follow those instructions literally, and the net result is that you get a pretty nice PowerPoint. That sounds flippant, but you know that is at the core of what is in the equity market right now and disruption to legacy software names. So
it's interesting the pace of improvements. You know, a couple of months ago we were talking with Mark Douglas from Mountain, and he was saying he didn't like to use Claude for coding because it would write like 4 million lines of code for something where he would normally only need like 40,000, right? And then fast forward to last week, we were talking with Vlad Richter from Fencer, and he said he had previously felt the same way, but now it's so good that he's using it for 100% of his coding work.
Yeah.
So, and that just in a couple of months. How big is the leap from Opus 4.6 to Opus 4.7? What do you think? Or from 3 to 4.7?
Well, it addresses two issues. One is memory. You know, the memory wall in a coding agent is quite important. You need to be able to recall an existing workload. If you go inside any company that has lots of computers, Bloomberg is one, if you look at the activity of the engineers that are working in code, this is really simple. They would use a tool like Anthropic's Claude to write new code. Maybe 90% of new code is written with AI. But existing code bases, there is too many risks. It's very difficult to debug and work through old code. That is about 50%. It's much lower. What they're saying with Opus 4.7 is it's actually quite good at that. It understands contextually that existing code base. One really critical thing here, because Danny mentioned Mythos, right? What Anthropic is trying to hit the market over the head with is we are not going to release a new model until we're certain that the guardrails work. So in Opus 4.7's case, it's an update to an existing model. They're basically saying, by the way, guys, we checked. The guardrails work pretty good.
This won't, release something that everyone can hack into your companies and find zero-day vulnerabilities.
Because in very simple terms, the more powerful a model gets, the heightened risk of misuse by a bad actor, or the behavior of that model being outside of the parameters you'd hope to set for it.
And maybe this is also just the cynic in me, and maybe just my lack of understanding of these models. But how much of this constant announcements, be it from Anthropic, from OpenAI, to say we have Mythos, oh, by the way, we have something, OpenAI, we have something too that can also, might be dangerous that we're rolling out to a limited number of people. How much of this is also just a bit of marketing ahead of expected IPOs?
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, I would go back to, and I don't know if I'm allowed to do this spoiler, but like there's a Wall Street Week episode that looks at this, the actual use of the AI tools in the world of coding, right? Yeah. But that is real. And so when we, on air, talking about capital expenditures and which chips they're using, I think it's important to remind oneself, well, what is it that they're actually doing with that compute? They are training new models and they're making them available to run to the outside world. And like, that is becoming more tangibly useful. The question that the street wants to see is, if I have a capital expenditure figure and I put it into my model, my spread Excel, because they're still on Excel, what revenue growths am I seeing on the basket of companies I cover out the other side? And there's still like a disconnect on that a little bit.
I'll tell you both that it's pronounced Mythos.
Yeah, I meant to say, I knew that.
What did I said Mythos?
Yeah, I thought that was a Britishism. And Danny picks up these English, like she says fragile,
Which sounds so much better than fragile.
Can I ask you, Ed, about the environment in San Francisco? I remember a couple of years ago seeing these eye-popping salary figures for even a starting programmer, right? Getting $400,000 a year. Are you still, for like your first job, are you still seeing those kind of numbers? Or since this software can do all that for you, do those people get paid less and real estate prices in San Francisco come down?
Well, those are two separate issues, the compensation and how productive a worker is and how much of that work's being done by artificial intelligence. The question is, if AI is writing all the new code, what is a very talented engineer actually doing every day? And the answer to that is observing and reviewing the work that AI has done. Because to Danny's point, if you write a large part of a new code base, software, and you just put it into the world with actually anyone checking it, that's a risk. That is what's happening. So the new code is being written by AI, but talented and experienced engineers are then sitting down in the morning and reviewing the work it's done before shipping it.
Surely that takes just as long as doing it yourself.
Well, no, that is the debate for industry, and I'm not in industry, but they would argue that the time-consuming part is writing and debugging in real time, not the review of it.